November 2025 Instructional Committee meeting. Thank you all for attending. We have several board members present tonight. We have Ms. Robinson, Ms. Campbell, myself, Ms. Deans, Ms. Sedell, Ms. Higgins, and Ms. Walsh is also here. She'll be joining us in just a little bit. And from administration, we have interim superintendent Herbert, and we have assistant superintendent Yarlock. Thank you. We're going to have some great stuff on our 306s today, and I think I'm programming. So that would be great. So Tim, I'll turn it right over to you and Kim, and you guys can let us know what we need to do.
So today what you'll hear, the high school is going to do some follow-up based on questions that came out of the last meeting. What I will emphasize when we're talking about 306s and the minimum requirements is from the Department Ed and this committee came out essential standards we have to cover. So it's not requiring courses, it's not requiring us to adopt a certain curriculum. It's to ensure the curriculum we have in place is hitting on these standards. So the presentation that the high school will give will be on a variety of courses that could hit the standards to a varying level of degree, but would align with the new 306 standards. Key things to understand, this would come impact for the incoming ninth graders this fall, and each year as they're going through the experience at Concord High School, each year teachers, curriculum facilitators at the high school, which is essentially our building leadership team, along with administrators, review our courses, review what content is covered, review standards, assessments, and stuff throughout the year, and are constantly revising these documents. So even what's presented to you tonight will continue to evolve over the next few years, and I guarantee over the 4 years that the incoming freshmen are at Concord High School. So know what you have in front of you is work that has been fine-tuned over the summer to be put in place in a reasonable timeline to be implemented for the fall of 2026. But as it's being implemented, as we're working through it, we continue to, one, update the instructional committee on this process. You'll continue to get updates on courses and how we're meeting these requirements, as it's something that we do annually, but I think we do it to a lesser extent of emphasis when we're showing off the program of studies, when we're going over the graduation requirements, but those are things we could put an emphasis so you can see the evolution over time. And then lastly, I would just reiterate, if there's pieces of the curriculum that you want to dive into and you have more questions, when we're setting our committees in January, we're also setting our goals. The board could set goals within those committees to do a deeper dive into some of the curricular or instructional activities going on at the high school. What I encourage you tonight is to focus on the fact that it is the new minimum standards and emphasize standards that are being covered in the course.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for having us back for more clarification on our presentation that we did to the board, and prior to that, the instructional committee. And your questions are really good questions that you have. For tonight's purpose, we really want it to be pretty much dialogue, so feel free to interrupt or ask questions as we go through, providing a little bit more clarity around the proposed changes that came through. I wanted to acknowledge a few people in the audience: Jody McLaughlin, Kimberly Blyer-Woods, Nicole Barnett, and a visitor, Danielle Holstro, and she's from the business department. I want to acknowledge these persons because they are on the curriculum, they're curriculum facilitators, and they're part of the team that has put an extensive number of hours into the proposal that we now have, and part of that was also not only the extensive number of hours, but the extensive amount of dialogue and sort of, the tug and pull that took place in terms of deciding which courses and which standards fall where. And to Mr. Herbert's point, one of the things that the 306 is requiring is that we do teach the Holocaust in middle school. So that doesn't mean, we cover it. So it's a standard, but it doesn't mean that we have to have a separate course. So if that helps you understand a little bit how these standards don't necessarily equate a course. equates content. So I want to also acknowledge the fabulous high school administrative team, and Kylene is going to start us off with a presentation that we've been working on. And in this, you will see that your specific questions are addressed, but that doesn't mean you need to stop us if you have more questions from there. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
First, we want to thank you for sending your questions. It helped us to tailor this follow-up presentation for you, and we know you'll still have more questions. We understand that this is a lot to absorb. I found that out in September when I walked into this work at the high school, and you're hearing about it for the third time. And it's a lot to take in, so we're going to do our best to explain it all, but we do understand the challenge of understanding the 306s. So what's up on the screen is a review of what you've seen before. These are the minimum requirements by graduation classes. And if you go to the class of 2030 on the right, that's the current 8th grade class. This is where the new competencies, the new 306s, are applied to that graduation class. And you can see at the bottom the 4 competencies that are part of those requirements: the statistics and data analysis, the financial literacy, digital literacy, and logic and rhetoric. And then you can see to the right just how we plan to address those competencies, both statistics. Oops, Kylie.
It's not you. The back one's working perfectly. Okay. Sorry, Chris.
Both the statistics and data analysis and financial literacy, we're offering a menu of courses where students can meet those competencies. And then the digital literacy and logic and rhetoric competencies are met after 12 credits for digital literacy and 18 credits earned for logic and rhetoric.
One of your questions had to do with how do we preserve choice for high achieving students with the addition of these requirements. And it also shows that in some ways we are on the same page. This is one of our most pressing questions as well. And I want to share with you that by not tying credits to specific seat time, we're able to do that. When we embed the 306 standards and competencies within existing courses, we don't have to increase required courses. There are many districts across the state that are literally just adding a course. So logic and rhetoric, 0.5, digital literacy, 0.5, probability and statistics, 0.5, which on the surface is much simpler, truthfully, and seems much more one-for-one in a very traditional seat time model. If you want to achieve having choice for high-achieving students, finding ways to embed those standards into our existing courses allows for that. That's why when we get a little bit further into the slideshow, when you see the courses that we have on the menu for, say, probability and statistics and data analysis, all but one are actually AP courses, because what we're trying to do is demonstrate that those standards are embedded within those rigorous courses. The other thing about preserving choice for high achieving students is we have lots of students who benefit from our elective programs like our music and performing arts, like CRTC, and those take up a lot of blocks of their day. And so the way that we preserve choice for high achieving students is to ensure that those other requirements are embedded in other courses for them. So that's how we're trying to preserve choice for high achieving students, and by embedding those standards.
Kylie, can I just ask a quick question on
Yep.
that? Just, I'm not sure myself. How do you show that those requirements are embedded? Are they pulled out? Are they graded separately? How do people know that they are being taught and evaluated?
Those standards will need to be a part of their curriculum maps. And that is going to be work for us this summer if they're not already explicitly in there. I'm going to show you in a couple slides where we already have common language. We did some crosswalk work over the last 2 weeks since we met with you, and I can show you where we already see common language across many of our courses. But do we have some additional work to ensure that there might be a standard being assessed? You're absolutely right, Brenda. We're going to make sure that we do that work. But I'm going to show you where the language across the curriculum maps, even without us having this work, is already there.
Great, thank you.
One of the other questions was about double dipping. And I had to reread this question a couple times because there's a lot of different ways you could read double dipping. Like, how is there double dipping happening? So I had to break this down a little bit. First of all, I want to say that if you're talking about, where do I start? If you're talking about digital literacy and logic and rhetoric as a double dip because they're not actually in a course, please know that's why we're asking for the increase from 24 to 25 credits. Because we recognize that they're not actually sitting in a course for those 2 half credits. So there's no double dip, if you will, on digital literacy and logic and rhetoric, because what we're saying is those standards are integrated in their courses. And that's why we're asking for the increase from 24 to 25 credits. We don't want to limit, nor do we want to double dip. We want to say we see those standards across. And I'm going to show you a slide that actually reads those standards for you. So you actually see that they're fairly general. They're not specific to one course at all. And when Kim mentioned the discourse across the facilitators, it became a bit of a tug on, well, I could own logic and rhetoric. No, I could own logic and rhetoric. Mm-hmm. And so when we recognized how far it was across all of the disciplines, it made sense to do it that way. If the double dip you're concerned about is, say, I'm going to give a couple examples, and this gets a little bit into the weeds, but I just want to make sure I'm answering the question. Let's say a student selects to take statistics of sports, which is a statistics course, but it's also a math course. They can't get both. They have to make a decision on whether that counts as one of their 3 required math courses or whether they would like it to count as their statistics course.
And is that a state rule or is that your rule?
No one's rule.
Well, so I'm a little confused because you're saying we don't need to require separate courses because all this stuff is embedded in the course. But I'm worried about a kid getting to graduation and saying, what do you mean that didn't count for my math requirements?
Yeah, can I give kind of like tell me if I'm off base on this, but let's take the digital literacy example. Digital literacy was legislated into basic curriculum with the advent of computers, and oh my gosh, all of our kids need to learn digital literacy. It's super important. So it becomes a standalone course. Well, we're utilizing digital resources all across classrooms in every single subject lane. So all of a sudden, having a standalone for digital literacy seems kind of silly. It's spread across the entirety of the curriculum. So it was legislated out of curriculum, saying it's a useless way of teaching kids. They're already using digital literacy in every single classroom. But now digital literacy is back at a 0.5 credit because somebody on the board that was deciding these things was like, oh, you know what? I feel like they're not getting enough of that. This is people who don't know education. They don't have any degrees in this. They've never spent any time in a classroom setting. It's sort of like when you legislate cursive back into curriculum, it's really just the impulses of some political appointees. So this stuff is hard to understand because a lot of it doesn't make any logical sense
That's not
for
my
education.
question.
No, but I'm trying to sort of like glean how these things are kind of like
I agree that the state did a
amorphous.
crappy job
Yeah,
in
they
the
did a
306
terrible
standards.
job
That's
with
not. We
this.
can all agree that they both made things less clear and put crazy new burdens. That's fine, but I'm trying to dig into the choices we're making, and what I don't understand is if we say, oh, statistics is embedded in all these different courses, so you can take whatever and meet the core, the core requirement, but then we're saying, but you have to choose that your social studies course is your statistics course. But you don't have to choose a separate digital literacy course. That's you just get the credit for going meeting your other. So I really worry about confusion, like a kid getting to graduation and saying, wait, I thought this counted because it's a statistics course.
So why doesn't it count for both?
Both.
So I
Yeah.
think, and I don't want to call Jody McLaughlin up here, but I can channel her behind me, and I'm thinking, I think that I wouldn't mind if she shared. We already have some things like this, and they do a pretty good job of keeping track of that. Do you mind coming up?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Jody McLaughlin is a school counselor at Concord High School, and she serves on our curriculum facilitator leadership team as a representative of the counselors. Someone joins that team every few years, so Jody gets to join us in this conversation.
Thanks. So we do have a couple of things like this. The one that comes to mind is film study. So it is an English class, and it can count as an English class, but students can also take it as their art requirement. Not many do, but if they take it as their art requirement, they can't also count it towards their English credits. They have to pick one or the other.
And that's just one example of things we already have been doing for 20 years at Concord High School.
Can you talk about how we track these decisions that students make?
Yeah, so every year we, school counselors sit down with every student on their caseload. Actually, that season is coming up at course selection time, and we have a checklist. We hand them all their graduation tracker, which is kind of a more organized transcript, and it's very not official. But we hand them that, and we give them the checklist for their graduation year, and then we sit with them, and either they have, they come to us with it all checked off, or we help them go through and make sure they've got everything accurate and up to date, so that they do understand. And those conversations happen, 3 times over the course of their high school career, at least.
And can you speak to in Power School, the not necessarily the reports, but the pages as a counselor you can view that helps you, stay on top of the student requirements?
Do you mean the one that the students can see with the green bars?
Yes.
Or so there is right now a graduation tracker that students can see and families can see when they go into Power School, and it shows them with colorful bars. Green means it's done, yellow means it's in progress, and red is they haven't accomplished it yet. And so students can see where they are with everything in there.
So you haven't run into a lot of situations where this sort of scenario has come into play?
No, counselors check, I don't want to say obsessively, but we're pretty dialed in on what students need and making sure that they understand what they need, particularly when it comes to senior year. Every senior gets a letter sent home in early September saying, hey, your student or families get them sent home. Your student is a senior, here's what they need for graduation, and all of the things, whether it's on their schedule or not on their schedule, how they're doing on credits and all of that stuff. So there are no surprises.
So they get the letter after the start of the senior years? So what happens if they're not on track?
Could you talk about the seminars and stuff you guys do throughout the spring with
Oh, yeah, of
juniors,
course.
sophomore, freshmen as
Yeah,
well?
so in addition to the academic advising that we do every year and frequently meeting with families and students if they have questions along these lines as well, we go in and talk to freshmen every year independent of academic advising and talk about credits and transcripts and here's what a transcript looks like, and we kind of prime them for what's the story I'm writing for myself here in high school. We go in and do some career exploration stuff with our sophomores, and we always kind of tie in the classes at Concord High and the pathways with how they can, kind of start on that journey or start exploring. Junior year, we do seminars, usually in March or April, where we talk about college planning, and we continue to weave in, here's what you have open to you at Concord High that could help you toward the goals that you have, and through all of that. Like I said, I don't want to say obsessively, but counselors are always checking multiple times over. So those conversations happen every single year, multiple times, but the actual, we call it the senior letter, and it's really just to make sure that there's no confusion. It's sort of,
I just don't understand why that doesn't go home in the spring, right? If
Well,
you're
just
saying,
so
oh.
it also goes home every semester on the report card.
Okay.
So the end of semester report card, semester 1 and semester 2 of every year, it actually has on the bottom of it
Okay.
a mini transcript that shares the credits you've earned, how many credits you have up until this point. We've been able to create a pretty fancy report card that not only reports on the active classes, but what you have until this point, and that goes home at the end of semester 1 and semester 2 as well. So
And the other reason we wait until the start of the year is some students are finishing up credits over summer school. So we need to wait for that information to come in. Some students have, usually it's summer school credits that come in. So we want to make sure that the letter we send home is an accurate representation of what they've actually done, in addition to what they actually have on their senior year schedule. So we want to give them a minute to kind of sort out what they want to do for their senior year before we send that letter home.
As someone who graduated from high school similar to this and hired from different states, I will say high schools that do it this way, you have seniors graduating either more ready for college or ready for workforce because they're used to being empowered and owning their path in life. So while it may seem big and scary, it's actually a really great activity for them. We talk about skills and competencies. Them just going through this activity is fantastic. So thank you.
thank you very much. I'm going to keep going. Keep asking questions and challenging us, please.
So one of the requests out of the last board meeting was to take a look at our percentage of students who are, or percentage of courses that are taken via online methods. And we have two main vessels for that, one being VLAX and one being Plato or now Edmentum. So this is the 3-year history, the last 3 years. As you see, we saw a slight uptick at the end of last year, up to 1.1%, but not a statistically significant uptick in the percentage of students taking VLAX, percentage of courses that are taken via VLAX. Plato or Edmentum is our recovery vessel. So if a student has not passed a class or is remediating for summer school, they can use Plato or Edmentum. Or if they are special ed, they can take a course online through our Plato class at our high school. And this goes to show just the raw number of courses. So again, a student may have taken multiple VLAX courses. So this doesn't represent the total number of students, but the total number of actual courses that were completed. And we broke it out by discipline for you because there was a specific question regarding that PE health credit. So there were 72 courses taken last year for credit. And some of them may have been students who were unable to complete a phys ed class due to an injury. I know at least 3 students had to take one broke his leg skiing and had to take a VLAX course for phys ed. So it wasn't all to try and fit in AP courses. There were other reasons for it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So another question that had come out of our last presentation was, how do we ensure staff buy-in on the criteria for logic and rhetoric and digital literacy? And again, we're very fortunate to work in a building in a school district that's embraced the philosophy of competencies for a long time and are very familiar with working within standards and having students meet those standards across courses, aside from having seat time in a standalone course. And really this has come out of the conversations with our facilitators and with their departments, who are really on board with having this as a method of meeting those requirements in digital literacy in logic and rhetoric rather than having standalone singleton courses. And if we go into the next slide, that's what Colleen was referring to earlier. And I know it's small. These are the standards that are listed out in the 306s for both digital literacy and logic and rhetoric. And as I look down, even as how those are written now, just coming out in July, I can say really confidently that these are all happening within our courses already at Concord High. Now, some of the work that we do have to do is be much more intentional with our curriculum mapping and making sure that that is articulated very clearly and that we're assessing students appropriately on these standards to make sure that we can say that, yes, they are meeting these after they've met or after they've been awarded 12 credits for the digital literacy or after they've been awarded 18 credits for the logic and rhetoric.
I wanted to call your attention to under number 2 on the right side, logic and rhetoric, understanding the principle of cause and effect. If you're in a room with all of the curriculum facilitators, who does that not apply to? It applies to science, it applies to reading, it applies to math. And so you can see how that's covered extensively, that particular standard. You would not want to just have that be a class about cause and effect. So, and actually, that's one of the standards that, pardon me?
That would be a very boring class.
Well, and also, you'll know that that is on the ELA map as one of the standards that we're required to cover.
Yeah. That's also included within social studies from the C3 cause and effect. In addition, the way it's written there, developing critical thinking skills to better identify fact from unverified information, goes with the working with sources from the C3. And then as you go into the skill of speaking and writing as means of communication or persuasion, you look through the Common Core and what they're doing in their English classes, and they're hitting those in almost every single one of their English courses or social studies courses.
Those are the only 4 standards for digital literacy and the only 4 standards for logic and rhetoric. There's nothing else over and above that. So to have one class built around 4 standards.
It's a waste of time and energy. Yeah, thank you.
There was a question about how we're going to continue to support students who are at risk of not graduating. The 306s actually have given us a 3rd track that we're building in. So we've always had the 700s, which are the adult diploma track. So students have alternative ways such as earning credit for driver's education, employment, along with adult diploma courses that are taken in the afternoon or evenings to get to 20 credits outlined by the 700s. And those students will earn a Concord School District adult diploma. True adults take them, as well as some duly enrolled students who were credit deficient going into their senior year, but still wanted to graduate with a 4-year plan. With the 306s, which will be our Concord School District diploma, is the 20 credits outlined by the new 306s as their state minimum. So at Concord High School, what we've proposing to you is our 25 credit plan, and that would qualify for the Concord High School diploma, meeting all the 25 credits over and above the minimum 306s of the 20 credits. So students still have alternate paths to graduation that we can work within to allow them to earn a diploma at the end of their time at Concord High School.
There was some questions about statistics and data analysis at the last presentation in terms of the menu of courses that we proposed meet the competencies for statistics and data analysis. So we just charted out for you math, social studies, and science, what those specific courses are. And it would be helpful for you to know what we're expected to be teaching for that stats and data analysis competency in each of those courses. So you can see that we listed out in doing investigations and analyzing the data, interpreting research findings, and talking about statistical significance, and then also demographic, economic, and statistical data interpretation. It's not very much in depth, but we are confident that all of these courses do cover these competencies. And again, as Kylene and Graham and Jim have all talked about, that's some summer work for us in terms of making sure that our curriculum maps show that, and that in any cases where we want to do a better job working, making sure that the full competencies are met. That summer work will include social studies, science folks working with math folks, and perhaps even doing some co-teaching next year.
Can you, let's take AP European History. How does AP European History, and as you know from 2 weeks ago, I want more history classes, meet the requirement for understanding statistical significance and probability in research?
Well, I know there is a great conversation between 2 people behind me who could answer that.
Welcome to the table.
You're welcome.
Come on up.
Kim Blyer will speak to social studies, and Nicole Barnett will speak to math.
Well, but students are going to be taking one class, right? They're not taking a math history class, right? So I want to know how that European history class is going to meet the requirement. Yep.
Okay. Hi, Nicole Barnett, math
Hi.
teacher, math curriculum facilitator. So Kim and I had sat down to discuss the social studies elective courses that meet the data analysis standards. In the 306s, it states statistics or data analysis. So in the math Common Core, there are no specific data analysis standards. There are statistics and probability standards. But in terms of social studies department, they have data analysis. So, right.
Yeah.
Yes. So I can hand this over. Kim shared with me a lot of information and examples. Kylie, did you send them to the board?
They were in your packet. In the packet that we sent that was follow-up in the memo, there were several pages that were actually printouts that Kim had shared that were actually examples from different AP social studies classes where there was data analysis happening. But if you want to share a little bit about those.
I don't think I actually got the packet. I think it probably only got sent to Instructional Committee.
Oh.
Because I didn't.
Or was it in the memo?
I thought it was in Tim's memo for the week.
Oh, all right.
It was this Friday message.
No, it might have gone just to instructional committee, that particular piece.
Okay.
Well, so for example, the College Board and AP coursework does a lot of DBQs, document-based questions, and essentially there's a very broad question thrown at the students with a series of primary source documents, usually 10 to 12 of them, and they have to synthesize that information into a thesis and then use it to analyze whatever moment in history is the topic of discussion. And one of the examples that we sent was a document-based question where out of the 10 documents, 5 of them were statistical data. I think it was about the witch trials. And so students have to analyze that data, put it together, and come up with a conclusion based upon it. So we do a ton of work with the demographic data actually across all social studies classes, but especially the AP curriculum. Like if you take a look at the AP exam in any of those topics, a ton of the questions are analyzing data. You know, that the AP exam gives a graph or a chart or a data set and then asks questions that require the student to analyze it. So that's a skill that we work on constantly in our social studies classes across the board.
One thing I want to just point out about this list too, just programmatically, your students who are electing to take those social studies and science courses are already taking 4 years of math too. I just want to share
Not anymore.
No, they would be. They have room for it. So they will be. So just know that your students, their profile, when they are taking AP European history, they're already on a pathway for taking 4 years of math that includes AP calculus. And so your students that you may be concerned about not necessarily getting a semester of or of probability and statistics is already taking 4 years of math.
You're talking about high achieving students.
100%.
We're dropping the math requirement in this proposal from 4 to 3, which is another question. And I get that, but I actually think that a lot of people need to better understand data and statistics analysis, and we might do better as a country if we understand the data. So if we're only, so you're talking about the high achieving students, and certainly we want opportunities, but how is every student going to get a grounding? Is it statistical algebra? Is it statistics sports? Is it I just yeah.
So another reason to have the menu of options for the courses in meeting the statistics or data analysis standards is allowing students to choose their path towards graduation and where they feel their plan and heart may lie in terms of their future. And even as a math teacher, I am so proud to be a colleague of Kim in the social studies department, in that we're crossing the bridge, literally the Concord High School bridge, from one building to the next in co-curricular and cross-curricular standards is really impressive and powerful for our students. Going towards the conversation of reducing math credits to 3. The students are in this path utilizing AP classes as their data analysis standard. They're probably already taking AP statistics as well.
But
So-
we're talking about
So I didn't take a lot of any AP classes. I took a class called Bio 2, so I'm gonna look at myself as a science student that will not take AP Psych or AP Bio. As a history student that wouldn't have taken AP Euro or AP American, I just wouldn't have. So where are the classes that might offer these standards that wouldn't be an AP person?
So you could take probability and statistics, and then you actually have 3.5 years of math, not 3. Right. So I just want to point
So I
that
could
out.
take it as a
Remember,
separate
probability and
class.
statistics
Okay.
is outside of the 3 math credits. So if you're not on the AP route, you have a couple choices there. Probability and statistics. Statistics of sports actually is a very cool class that a lot of students are finding access because it's authentic and real world, and a combination of that math learning and that application of real world. And so that's your choice. Now, because it's not a math credit, it's a probability and statistics data analysis, you actually now have 3.5 credits in the, if you will, of math. One's counting as the statistics and data analysis, the other 3 are within the math program. So we're back to 3.5. So the benefit is for some students who may be not on that track, you're still achieving 3.5 credits within math.
So, okay.
And that just relates to the other concern, which is a couple of years ago, high school came before this board and said, we need to increase math credits. And now you're coming before this board and saying, we need to decrease math credits by a whole credit. And I was on the board for that, so I'm having trouble saying, okay, you told me we needed more math, and now you're telling me we're going to reduce it.
I mean, they're trying to thread a needle.
I think the key thing is it's not necessarily, we're trying to hit additional standards through the curriculum and keep flexibility in the schedule. In the end, the standards that they will hit in a variety of courses will still increase the math exposure and understanding of math in a practical sense in some of these situations. I'm not saying that it's what we had planned 4 years ago, but I am saying it is a more tactical approach to ensure that we're embedding math and math standards across curriculum. And so when we're taking a social studies class, or we're taking sociology or econ, that we are doing some data analysis, that not only we just doing it, but we're doing it and exploring the specific standards that would also tie to a math class and using it in a practical sense. So I get what you're saying, Pam. I was here and part of that team that was promoting additional math and STEM, and I don't think those sentiments are lost. I just think that we're coming to realization it's going to have to, in order to maintain that integrity and keep options open for students to have the flexibility of doing performing arts, CRTC, AP courses, or just our general studies. In order to be able to offer these, that we still have to be willing to consider how can we integrate it across the curriculum.
But you're increasing electives. Our class of 21, 27, current requirements was 5 electives. If you put the math requirement back to where you were, you'd still be at the 5 electives we're at now. It's the inconsistent. My
I
kid's
understand.
class of 2031, he'd be like, what are you doing arguing for more math, Mom?
No, I understand.
But it just seems inconsistent to me, and I know you're trying to meet these standards, but what I don't know is what do we want? What do you want to say that our kids know and have a strong grounding in it? And I agree. I love our pathways. I love choice, but we still have to have a central philosophy that we want all kids to have a strong grounding in these things. And so if we're saying we think we don't need that in math anymore, then I feel like there's not a guiding principle to this.
I would not say that we don't need it in math. I would say that that the transition in thinking is we have to integrate things like math and literacy across our curriculum, and that's what the attempt is here. Based on what Nicole shared earlier, the level of discussion her and Kim were having about math standards as they looked at social studies curriculum, that's the evolution that's happening in order to ensure that we're still having meaningful conversation and exposure to these math standards.
Correct me, please, if I'm not getting this quite right. I'm hearing that we may be reducing the math credits to 3. However, our students would have at least 3.5. We're just not calling them all math credits.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
It's more cross-disciplinary.
Right,
So it's
okay.
more real life.
So we're taking the statistics and we're not calling it a math class anymore. We're calling that a social studies class for this particular student.
It could be that.
Or
It
just
could-
calling it the statistics.
Right.
It could be that, and the fact that we have to designate it individually on a transcript, separate from a math requirement, saying that this course serves to. So, like, if you took the stats of sports and you said, I'm taking this for my statistics requirement per the 306s, not that a student's using that language, but that's what they were trying to designate that course for. We can't just have it listed as a math requirement. We have to
They would
really
still have to
single
have
it out.
3 other
But,
than that.
but it would be a math course taught to math standards, taught in the math department, but we got to distinguish it different from the other math
Well, no,
courses.
it's European history is not a math course.
No,
taught to
no,
math
I'm
standards
just
in the math
using-
department, is it?
I was using that as an example. You're still getting 3.5 in there. What I would say about the European history, what I'm hearing from the experts in the standards in that area is they're saying you're going to hit another 0.5 of standards that would align with a stats requirement per the 306s, which those requirements are math, are math specific.
And this is the efficient way that we have found, you have found, to meet the various needs of our diverse population of students. Everybody can get what they need this way.
And it's not like you're making these changes because you wanna,
And,
right? Like, this is the state making a decision without any of your input. And so, yeah, there's still a desire for 4 math credits, but this is like, we're trying to implement a 200-page document that doesn't make sense forwards or backwards. So the best we can do is try to match what these standards are, at least in the first year, and like see what it feels like. This is like totally in flux, and who knows? Maybe we get a different governor and we get a different commissioner of ed, and then all of a sudden, if they are leaning in a certain direction, well, I don't like the 306s, we can open them up whenever we want. And then you've got a new set. So like, feels very much like a point in time that is constantly evolving. And as these folks are feeling it happen in the classroom and with kids in real time, that's really the only way to know if this is going to fit into, or how these things will fit into our ethos as a district.
Yeah, but we've been experimenting a lot with our kids in the last few years, and so
That's
actually the point that I wanted to make. I totally respect and really appreciate all your effort. I think this is tremendous. And thinking about how we message the fact that this is state and that we follow the law. And this is what the voters apparently want. And so I'm concerned, families like mine, I mean, I have 4 kids within 6 years. I have 3 different graduation standards in my house. And so that constant evolution can maybe fuel some disengagement. Distancing language can fuel disengagement. And so Sarah, I think you're right on the nose about like, if this is a state standard, we meet the state standard. But how do we message and address the optics that like, this is apparently what people want, you know?
And this
Like-
isn't necessarily what like people want. This was never voted on by the public. This did not pass a legislative process. This was in administrative rulemaking, and it was triggered every 10 years. So this was whoever, by the grace of God, sits on that board in that 10-year span, those are the 9 individuals that are going to decide what our kids are learning. And for all of the effort that the educators in this state tried to put in, hundreds of hours of volunteer time, specifically from one individual who of her own volition, gathered educators together across the state and pulled together their recommendations for this document, which were presented multiple times to the commissioner and that board and were resoundingly set aside and not even looked at. So we're dealing with an entity that never thought about the way that we message. So that's why this is super sticky, and I appreciate you bringing it up.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Sarah.
I want to say though, in spite of that, I also want this board to know that we have put in hours and hours. And I just want to share with you, when we got some of your questions after the last meeting, one of my first questions that we asked as a team is, how do we encapsulate the last 7 months of work we've done for a school board in literally 3 30-minute sessions? And there are people not in this room we have brought into the conversations, and there are other people. So I also want you folks to know that in spite of those facts, please know that we have not looked at this and been flip nor not in depth. I just want people to be aware that we really are trying to think about what is best for kids at Concord High and how do we continue what's best for kids. And I think the very first instructional committee, we said, here's what we value. We know that Concord High School constituents value choice for their kids at Concord High School. They value rigor and our advanced placement programs, and I've shared that is definitely, are performing arts and our elective programs in art and in technology education. Those are things that are valued. How do we ensure moving forward that we have the financial ability to maintain all of that choice, which is so valued, at the same time as put in these additional requirements? And what we know is you can't always do both.
Right.
And when you have fewer choices for courses, that means everyone has to take this thing. So if everybody can only take this thing, guess what happens to these choices? Because now I have to fill 300 kids in a section of this one thing versus the choice. So like Tim said, it's not that we're not aware that there might be some shifts or things that we have to look at in our curriculum maps, but we're trying to keep those values at the forefront of these decisions we're making. That was our sort of vision and purpose. But that's messy, and that's not traditional education. This is messy to try to message, to your point.
But also, you're bringing us in at the end of this process, and I think that's maybe part of what, because the board set the old standards, and I think part of my issue is you're coming back and saying we're going to drop them with that. And
we created the new.
You have 2 weeks to decide.
So we created with Mike Reardon an approval for those before the 306s came out.
I know the timeline.
So the timeline, but then just so you know, we tried to come to you guys in October to start sharing this. We had to push back a month. So we knew that this was a big thing for you guys. So we started this in July. It's not like we've had this for 2 years. We've had July. It was July. And then we came to you guys. We were ready to go in October. We had to push back a month, and now we're here. So time flies. But we've not been sitting on this for a year and a half.
I'd like to just say, too, I cannot think of a better group of people, humans and educators, to have doing this than the group that you've put together. It is messy. It is uncomfortable sometimes. But I'm speaking from the instructional committee, who's worked with you on multiple projects and different ideas and thoughts and changes over the time. There isn't a better group than what we have here in Concord. So please don't think that we're not appreciative of all of your hard work.
Go ahead, Barbara.
I was just going to say something. It's a bit of semantics. So I would look at myself as a much more typical high school student than a super high achieving. We have a lot of kids that take AP, but when you look at the whole number of a graduating class, a lot more kids are not doing those classes than are. And so in my reality, if I had my list of choices and I took Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 and Geometry, good, I'm done. And that's when I graduated 1,000 years ago, that's what it took me 2 years to get through Algebra 1. So I had 4 years of math, but that's because it didn't work. My point here, though, is that at the end, if a student like me needed 4 credits for math, so I could take the statistics class and I could take probability and statistics, now I have 4 math credits, but I still have to find a class to get the competency, because you can't use it for 2 things, correct?
No. So if you have your algebra, geometry, algebra 2,
Right.
or whatever they call it, those 3 core courses for college preparedness,
That's the 3 math credits.
My point is, if we stayed with 4.
Yes.
So now
then you
I
have
need
your stats.
4.
Well, then you would.
So I can
would
take
assume
my-
if we would have 4 math credits, that the statistics would be that the menu would disappear. Right. The menu would disappear if it was 4 math credits. Right. And
so-
that's what I'm saying about the choice versus.
Well, it's the point I'm trying to make is, at the end of the day, it doesn't change what I'm taking for math credits. I'm still gonna have more than 3 years of math because I have to get the 306 credit. So I don't really like it either. I have to acknowledge that I wish it said 4, but I think those high achieving students are going to take 4. It won't change for them. They take 4 when they only need 3. So they're getting 4 credits, and a student like me is gonna at least get 3.5 because I have to take those classes. So I'm still getting more than 3 years of math.
But the optic is still that we're dropping
Correct.
the math
I understand.
requirement for the kids who have been through COVID.
We have decided.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is the other 306 requirement where there are a menu of courses. It is a shorter menu. We have a business course called Personal Finance. We have a life studies course called Planning for Life and Career. CRTC has Business 1 and 2, although I'm learning more that Business 2, not Business 1, may meet those requirements. That's going to take a little bit more of a look. And in social studies, AP Economics. I wasn't sure how many of you have had I pulled out what the 5 practices are as outlined by the 306s: the earning, income, spending, saving, managing credit, and managing risk. Once again, similar to what you're saying, there's pros and cons to which way you go here. Truthfully and ideally, and I don't want to speak for Danielle. She's welcome to join us. Do you want to join?
Trade.
It's up to you.
Please come take the hot seat.
Just don't go too far.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten to social studies yet.
I'm going to stay as also the business curriculum.
So Danielle Hilstro is one of our 2 business teachers at Concord High School. Thank you. I really put you on the spot.
Yep.
Don't be too mad at me. And she and I had a really healthy conversation today about this. And as examples of what are the pros and cons to having one course meeting the requirements versus a couple different courses, knowing that the courses may meet it differently. In our ideal world, most students would take personal finance at Concord High School as the way that they would meet the financial literacy requirement. That feels ideal, and I hope Danielle will speak to what personal finance does and why that would be ideal for most kids. Where we're having healthy discourse is to what extent do these other courses meet these common curriculum practices in the 306 language. But once again, keep in mind with fewer courses means this is it versus electives. So do you want to share, Danielle?
I don't know. I did inject myself into this conversation, into this topic, and made it clear that I was going to come tonight, and Kylie got wind of it and said, hey, we should probably sit down and talk. And since then, I've actually gone through the 5 curriculum practices, and there are quite a few that overlap with other business courses, but that's still a conversation that we can have.
Yep.
I've been working for almost 10 years trying to get personal finance as a graduation requirement here in the district. I thought it would slip right into that .5 where digital literacy is and nobody would notice. Great. And so to see that it's finally here is wonderful, and then to think that it was going to be taken away through other courses was not so wonderful, which is why I put myself in that situation where we needed to meet. But I understand it, and I think this is a very important topic, and if strategies can be shared and we can collaborate, I will feel more comfortable that it's being covered well enough for me. in the other courses, because I know what I do in personal finance. I created the course 25 years ago as money management. So, and it's, I have a little hesitancy, but I do understand why or how it could be met across these other topics potentially.
One of the things that Danielle and I talked about is, just like Nicole and Kim had conversations about the data analysis, is working collaboratively with these other courses and ensuring that it is, you know, being discussed and how it's covered. However, I will also share that just like Kim is passionate about her social studies classes and math is passionate about math classes, Danielle is passionate about business courses, and the requirement of personal finance is really important, and not losing sight of that. And that's also, just I want to share with you, that's the crux of this whole challenging situation, is making sure that there's rigor and making sure that we're meeting standards, but understanding that flexibility and choice are a piece of everything we do. And we don't want to lose sight of one for the other. And so looking at, and one of the things that Danielle and I just talked about today is, and I'm not surprised she hasn't been doing her homework since, that's what she does, is, you know, are there other business courses that may meet the 5 common curriculum practices? And could those be added so at least it creates more opportunity within the business department for students? So if personal finance wasn't necessarily their course, but entrepreneurship or one of the other courses within the business department could meet that, at least that then opens up some other opportunities. And so this could be seen as an opportunity for the business department in considering how those could be met. So could courses be added to this list as a result of that work? Yes, they could.
Could courses be removed? Yes, they could.
Yes, they could. Yes, they could. And that's also the topic that we're having. So.
And for just to throw it out there, you'll see AP economics under the financial literacy options and under the data analysis options. AP economics still has to meet their own standards to ensure that students are prepared for AP test. So when Kylene says that we have summer work to do to look at the curriculum maps, that really is going to be a primary course that we need to look at and see, does it make sense to have AP economics be tagged as social studies, financial literacy, and data analysis, or are we spreading that course too thin? Like, is that beautiful? It's a beautiful thing, again, the cross-curricular nature that we're bringing into the high school, but like Danielle said too, we need to make sure that the options that we have and the courses we have aligned are really closely looked at. So the idea of being able to have the option and the choices for students is really what we're trying to get at and show you guys today.
I was just going to say that was the same question that I asked of the CRTC business teacher was, did she think this would decrease the rigor in her course? And that gave her pause for a moment. And so there is further discussion to be had as far as how this would affect those courses. But I think it can be done.
Keep going?
Yes.
Okay. Concern about decrease in math credits, which we all are in agreement upon. I just wanted to share a little bit of historical data from last year. 65% of the class of 2025 took 4 full credits of math, and the requirement was 3. An additional 5 to 10%, it got a little trickier to look at the 3.5 versus the 4 in my data with Krista Mers. But an additional 5 to 10% took 3.5 credits of math overall when it was a requirement of 3. So when you look at that, somewhere between 70 to 75% of the graduating class last year did take 4 math credits when the requirement was 3. I just thought maybe that would be helpful in that concern. Are there still 25% who are not? Yes, there are. There are. And so when you keep it at 4, are you then mandating 4? Yeah, I'm in total agreement. I just didn't want the message out there that because even if the Concord High School requirement is 3 in something, that doesn't mean that a significant portion of that graduating class doesn't exceed that. And this is something that we could come back and share with you next year, if we'd like to monitor that, to keep track of it, we can come back every year and share that data with you if that's helpful, so that we can monitor that progress.
So getting into the social studies a little bit, and Kim might want to come back up here.
Thank you.
As we wanted to talk about something that came up in the last meeting around our geography and cultures course that our freshmen have been taking at Concord High School as kind of their entry-level social studies course to the high school. And truth be told, I don't think I did a good job really explaining what that course was in our last meeting. I think we just saw the title geography and maybe assumed it had to do with like picking out landforms and different physical geography features, but it's really a human geography course. And so what we have here is just a bulleted list of the units of studies that students engage in over the course of that year. So what you'll see is you'll see the unit, you'll see the region of the world that's really used as the vehicle for the competency, which is in the parentheses, that students are engaging in and teachers are having them study. And so for that first one where it says visual tools, you'll notice that there's not a region of the world associated with that. That's because it's that entry-level unit where students are learning to read different types of maps, data tables, graphs, and really get a sense of like how we use these things as we start to study human geography across the world. And Kim, if you wanted to, you've taught that course for a long time.
I think you did a great job describing that part.
And so this is the culture competency that goes across every unit of study within our geography and cultures class. So students will be able to analyze diverse cultures from around the world, and the I can statement, sort of like the things that students are going to show that they can do. I can analyze elements of diverse cultures and their histories. I can compare and contrast cultures in order to develop awareness of human unity and cultural diversity.
I don't think you should put it on the minimum standards as a geography class if it's not just, because I think families will look at that and say exactly what I said, like why are we going from a half credit to 1 credit in geography when we don't have a world history requirement? So part of it is how you're describing it in these standards.
I think that's new academic standards though, because the 2 colleges I teach at, they do the same and at Dairyfield. So it's the same verbiage. I don't know if this is necessarily Concord. I think it's academic standards across the United States. So I don't know if you guys
we also have to communicate with the outside world and I was interested from the feedback of our 2 student members of the board on this class, and they did not rank it highly, I think is what, so, and this isn't about the requirements, it's just maybe that we need to look at this aspect of the curriculum. They had interesting feedback on it, I thought.
So a couple things about geography. First of all, the study of geography really is not just about the land, it's about the land and the people connected. So in order to be certified in social studies, I had to take, it was before the praxis, I'm that old, but I had to take coursework in everything that falls under the social studies umbrella. So I took a college level geography course. It was called geography, but we studied world religions. There are humans embedded in every aspect of the geography. And this is the only time in their curriculum in Concord School District where they're doing a real deep dive on the relationship between the humans and the environment and how the environment shapes the culture and the history and the conflict. When this course was originally created, we made it when the freshmen came up to the high school from Runlet. And we looked at the district-wide curriculum, and they get a lot of world history in 7th and 8th grade, a lot of it. And a lot of it is Western history. So we really wanted a moment in time where they're getting non-Western culture and history. And this is it. This is that moment. And we also wanted it to be real-world application. So, for example, tomorrow, if India and Pakistan enter into active conflict, students who take geography are like, oh, I studied that. That's like Gandhi and the British colonization of the region and the mess they left when they left the region. And so that's the idea behind the the creation of the course is that when things bubble up around the world today, students understand why that's happening, what's the history behind it, where did that come from, and also most conflict is related to scarcity, which brings you back to the environment. And so that's the goal of that course. Now, to be fair, a couple of years ago when the C3 first came out, which is the National Geography, Social Studies Standards, the geography standards don't have so much culture, so we stripped some of the culture out of the course in order to follow those standards, but we didn't like it. The students didn't like it. We've had multiple meetings with the Racial Equity Club where they came to talk to us about their perception of this course. And so there is an attempt on our part to reintroduce more of the celebration of culture, which was taken out a little bit. But like, I think they're fair, the school board representatives were fair when they talked about China. We do talk about government oppression of people in China and what it's like to live day to day in that country right now as part of an analysis, again, of geography and scarcity and government systems and how they're created and how they impact people. And so that is a big part of what we talk about, is that government and economic system that exists. But again, the focus is supposed to be non-Western world and a lot of modern day current issues that include a deep dive into where that issue came from, where it stems from. So there is a significant historical piece to it in that way as well.
So moving on through the 306s, one of the additions within the social studies was ensuring that there was a half credit of New Hampshire history within the history offerings at the high school level. So these are some of the courses that we offer right now as history electives. And part of our plan is to, as students are using these as an option to meet that half credit of New Hampshire history, how can we take some of the big topics from these courses, and I think all but one, are maybe two are semester courses, and really take it as to, okay, how did these eras look like at home here in New Hampshire? What was the impact of World War I or World War II? What did it look like here in New Hampshire in the different communities, and what was our involvement in those efforts? And so to just give you an idea of the pretty wide array of options students can have to try to meet that requirement.
I think that's great. I would love to take history or Hollywood. That sounds like an awesome course. But I guess the question is, if you're taking War and Peace, World War II, are you adding a New Hampshire element, or are you turning it into a New Hampshire course? Just because, I feel like you lose a lot of the understanding of it if it just becomes about New Hampshire.
So the 306s cite the 2006 New Hampshire social studies standards, which are very outdated. Yeah. But when we as a department we were worried about that as well when we embarked on this process. But when we went back and reminded ourselves, because some of us have been around long enough to have worked with the 2006 New Hampshire social studies standards, one of the things that we saw was that a lot of what's in there fits pretty seamlessly into these curriculums. And so we're not going to take War and Peace and make it all about the German refugee camp that was in Stark, New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. We're going to...
Prison of war.
Although it would be a fun field trip.
Not refugees.
What did I say? Did I say prisoner of war or refugees?
You said refugees.
I meant prisoner of war. I'm sorry. I got excited. So at any rate, it's about embedding it into those courses. I mean, it's really easy to take a look at the connections that are made. And again, when you go back to those 2006 standards, they're general enough that it's not a difficult fit.
The irony is we haven't had New Hampshire social studies standards all of this time because of the same board that designed the 306s.
Yep.
I don't know that I want them rewriting history standards to this point, so let's just leave it alone.
We had a couple follow-up questions about the junior seminar proposal. And I just want to share that this is just a proposal. This is something that is going to be worked on this summer with a large constituency of teachers, probably a couple students too. In fact, we mentioned this to a couple students, and I think actually even Erin was like, I would have taken that. Mm-hmm. So I think involving some current high school students as well. But just to clarify for your own, I understand in approving these 306s, understanding all of the tentacles of this becomes really important. Our idea, though, behind this is that it would be a semester-long project-based experience where they may earn
up to 1 credit that is required per the 306s, and that might be their half of financial literacy or their New Hampshire history, and maybe 0.5 of their CHS requirements, like half of a credit of English or social studies or science, not all 3, with the idea that it would be and this is where try not to think about like semester seat time must equal 0.5. This is the challenge for us, is that it would be a semester course perhaps, but could earn 1.5 credits, and those students would identify the standards and the areas that they would like to meet through that passion-based project based experience. But please know, we have not hashed out all these details. We just understand in that whole realm of pathways and choice and flexibility, we're trying to think about not only maybe students who are at risk for graduating, and 9th grade was really crappy, and so they're looking at trying to recover by their junior year, or the kid who wants to be in all 3 ensembles and AP art. We're looking at both ends of that spectrum and recognizing that this might be a benefit for many students who are along their journey, and recognizing there's a place where they need some space for themselves, other things, other courses. That happens for a lot of different reasons for kids in their high school years. So we want this to be part of that idea in what we're doing, but we recognize this too is very non-traditional, and it's going to take some time to really think it through. And I just want to bring up. Do you want to bring up this is not a Jim Corkum idea. This is all Jim. Thank God for that. But will you share that we actually got this idea from?
Depends if you like it or not.
If you like it, Jim's taking all the credit. So actually, 2 of the facilitators served on the NEASC committee that did Hanover's reevaluation, and they have a course they do it senior year. But we were really impressed. We got to sit down and talk to some of the students who took this course. And the one that sticks in my mind is the girl who was obsessed with cows. She created this very in-depth, so first of all, she built a life-size papier-mâché cow. And so that was like some art credit. And then she did a deep dive on the environmental implications of farming and gases and whatnot. And then she also did like a full write-up of like the economic profile of a farm and how do you run it and all of those pieces. And then she also had to like read, it's a very detailed course. You have to like read 5 books, you have to write so many essays. And it's not like a senior project where you like touch base with someone. It is a class that's part of your class routine. And then on top of that, the teacher who's teaching that course could be theoretically from any department in the school. And their job during class time is to help the students come up with what their proposal is, what their plan is, how it's going to be academically rigorous, how it's going to meet their own personal interests, and then how do you reach out to these farms that you have to go now spend time at because you're doing this thing, and how do you try to get donations for your art supplies because you're going to build this giant papier-mâché cow. And so that's what class time looks like, is sort of more like the executive functioning of the project itself. And kids from all ends of the academic spectrum talked about it and loved it. So it meets a real wide variety of needs for students and obviously creates some flexibility in their schedule.
And one of the suggestions I had, especially hearing your feedback and our own concern about the math credits, is that we can also put limits on what credits could be earned. So we can say, core math cannot be earned through this. So we can take into consideration some of those areas where perhaps we are concerned about and put that in the stipulations too. So we will bring this forward in the fall like we normally bring forward courses. And this has not been fully hashed out. But I just thought if that's helpful to clarify that a little bit more, we could do so.
So wrapping up all this work and how it reflects who we are as a school district, you can see those 4 bullet points that we talked about tonight: preserving choice for our students, continuing to focus on authentic and integrated learning, keeping pathways flexible for all students, those at risk and those who are very high achieving, and also maintaining FTEs. I can tell you that I've talked to many principals at this point about their approaches to integrating these competencies, and there are a lot of different approaches out there. Some are requiring more FTEs. Others are losing FTEs because they have eliminated their electives. And that's not anything that we knew that we wanted to do to our students, and we knew our board didn't want to do that to our students. I'm very excited about the work that the high school has done. I'm very proud of it. I support it 100%, and I know you're going to continue to have questions, and that's very natural, and we expect that because we've been doing this for months and you haven't. So thank you for your time, and we're happy to continue answering questions. We just have our last slide.
So, and I'll just share too, I mentioned this earlier and then I'll have Kim mention, we are also prepared if as part of your vote ultimately is needing more frequent check-ins. I've been researching what's called a graduation requirement audit tool. And instead of sort of looking at, it basically will give a way for us to report out how cohorts are meeting graduation requirements. And coming to you potentially every November to share that information so that if there's feelings like, how has this been going? If that's helpful in any way as part of the vote to understand that we really have played out 600 different scenarios, but we also don't have the crystal ball. And we know that, I don't wish for another pandemic in my educational career, but we know that things there's just so many things that can happen. After you go through that, man, there's nothing really, but things happen and you just don't know. But I think that if there's some sort of cycle where we continuously come to share, I think that helps in us trying to create the best and most simplest message too, because we understand that this is not easy to message at all. We do get that, so.
I'm not on the committee, but an observation I have is that our transportation department spends all summer putting together bus routes based on enrollment and times and all this, and the first 3 days of school are 9 times out of 10, excuse my French, a shit show. Because the most flawlessly laid out bus route has a million things that you can't see until the kids are in the bus and the bus is driving to school. And I feel a bit like this, like all of our concerns are valid, but you've done the work, you teach the students, it's your building, it's your day-to-day life. Mm-hmm. What we need to do is support saying yes, I'm hoping, so that 2 or 3 months in you can say, oh my gosh, this is way better than we thought, or hey, you know what, we need to relook at this. Mm-hmm. And that's what's going to make all of these things marry together in a way that works for kids and for, the message that we're sending and all of that. Mm-hmm. So that would be as an educator, those are my thoughts.
Co-signed.
And I think we have a staff culture of that anyway, Barb, of
well, the 4 people
relooking.
sitting here were doing all of this when I taught at Concord, and that was a long time ago.
Really never being satisfied and always
right.
looking at ways to improve and make things better.
Yes.
So
Sorry, Danielle, you're old.
What's our next step?
I would say I would be more comfortable, I'm not on this committee, but when it comes to the full board, I would be more comfortable on voting for 2030 and not beyond. So that we can revisit this discussion next year, so that you can set your plan for next year's 8th grade, this year's 8th graders, and they know what their graduation requirements are. But I would like to make sure that it's coming back to the full board to understand, so that the board is not just getting a report, but has input into whether they think it's working and what they're hearing from people.
Would we be able to achieve that in the November check-in?
That's a quick turnaround. I just remember that it's the graduating class of 2030. So they're going to pick their classes for next year. Technically speaking, the only requirements that are 306 related would be geography and cultures.
Maybe algebra.
And their algebra.
Their algebra, but none of the new 306 requirements.
Right.
So the new 306 requirements aren't going to come into play for them until potentially 10th grade, then a little bit more in 11th grade. So we just won't have a ton of data.
Yeah, but hopefully by the end of the summer, you will have worked out all the questions that you still have to answer on courses and crosswalks and
that is true.
You're asking us to vote with a lot of, we have a lot, telling us that you still have a lot of work to do to make this plan work. So I think, coming back to the board next year early in the fall to revisit this discussion might make sense.
We can do that without limiting the graduation year, though. Like, we don't have to put that.
It
only
won't
this
necessarily,
class.
I don't know.
Well, I think it's important to remember too that each board, each year,
Yeah.
it changes. So
Yeah.
you know, by the time 2030 comes, none of us may be on this board. So we don't want to set limits or things that we don't have to at this point in time for a board that may or may not be sitting here today.
I
So-
mean, we might fundamentally have a changed funding
Exactly. Lots
process
can
in
happen
5
in the
years.
next 5
Lots can
years.
happen, and we may, not have to. But I think giving these folks enough leeway to do your jobs
Right.
is where we stand.
Yes. So, from the instructional committee, I guess I would move that the instructional committee accept the proposed 306 changes and program of studies at CHS for the class of 2030. Do we take that out? I don't know.
Well, Kim, did you have a motion developed?
Oh, do you?
Well, the motion is up here.
This is just-
But that's for the
however,
full
that's,
board, right?
that's for the full board.
Right, so
exactly.
I'm making a
Yes.
motion for the
Okay.
To recommend to the full board.
instructional committee votes, and then we bring it to the, what was that?
I'm not sure that's a motion, but okay.
Well, we usually take votes. and
No,
then
no,
we-
no, no, I'm looking at
Oh, yeah,
that
no,
for the
I'm
full
not.
board.
Yeah. So I'm making a motion, yeah, that we accept the proposed 306 changes in program of studies presented by the CHS staff for the class of 2030, and that we bring the proposed changes to the full board for adoption at the January 5th, 2026 board meeting.
Second.
Thank you.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
No. Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
3-1.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. I
Girls,
can't.
stand up.
I just don't feel like.
10 toes down. Do it.
Yeah. Sorry, team. I respect the work. I think this is a tremendous amount of work. I have problems voting for a decrease in math requirements. I don't think the econ and the personal finance meet the test for.
Okay. All right.
It's 3-1, it passes, so we will bring it to the full board in January for a vote.
Okay.
Right, and we appreciate your hard work, thank you.
Yeah, thank you all very much. Appreciate you.
Is there anything else for us this evening?
Oh, yes, there is, and I just wanted to
Can I
mention
just
as
add
well.
one suggestion before we move on, that somebody reach out to the new board members and brief them on this so that they're not walking in with not sufficient information on the first.
Yep. I'm happy to do that. And if you reference December 5th's board memo, that's where the other document they were talking about. So I did send it to the full board on December 5th. Sarah Sadowski had some follow-up questions that helped guide some of this, and
Yes,
there was a
thank you
few
all.
others.
The questions were really well answered.
And I did want to say that there's a group of assistant superintendents and superintendents in the Lakes region who have been working on trying to unwrap and unpack the 306s, and they set up a timeline for everyone. And most boards are just hearing about this right now because we're trying to act together and in a consistent way. Some people have, like Laconia, perhaps a couple of other places in the Lakes region have brought it to the board, and others still are bringing it to the board. So unfortunately, this happened rapidly, and there was a lot of, there's unfunded mandates that are attributed to this, and it's a lot of hurry
Yeah.
up and hurry up.
See,
So, yeah.
I feel like we're complicit in the state overreach if we allow the messaging around this to continue to be, look at the innovative ways we're meeting increasingly unreasonable state requirements.
I understand. but I
I'm
don't wanna make their
totally
jobs
with
harder.
you.
I mean,
And
it's
they're
not
also,
their fault. But
it's
it's
totally
but they're
not
the
their
ones
fault.
that pay.
And you're
Yeah.
sort of at I mean, we have a different commissioner in the Department of Education now, but like the administrative rules got passed. Like what is holding up is accreditation.
Yeah.
So that's the big
Josh, are we
piece.
off?
Are we? Meeting's not over.
No, the meeting's not over.
Sorry.
Yeah, the accreditation for a district is what sort of is like hanging in the balance with this.
One of my big fears is that this opens a doorway for potentially our students being found not in compliance with whatever this new state standard is after the fact. And it opens the door for inequity and inequitable reinforcement. And I don't think that our staff would be complicit in that in any way.
Right.
But I just don't feel like
will-
saying that social studies meets a math criteria.
I would say when some of this, so I was part of the team up until August as well, aware of this. And some of these courses were put in front of the DOE in these summer sessions, and they said, does it hit the 4 standards? You showed them it, you showed them how you did it, and to the depth you did it. And a lot of these got their stamp of approval. Now, with that being said, I would add, they had several forums over the summer and whatnot. They still leaned on, the DOE is not dictating it to us. These are the standards we have to hit. It is up to the local board to set how, agreement on how we hit these standards. But I'll say for the work of this team, they are up against it to get to work into next year, get the master schedule, the course of studies out there. The nice thing about it is the geography was always a 9th grade requirement. Algebra 1 is typically a 9th grade requirement. I think it would behoove the instructional committee in January, when we set the instructional committee, set some goals around looking at what we want to make our standard curriculum requirements, and we can dig into it and we can have a deeper, rich conversation where the board's had an ample time with this stuff. And yes, they will have some time to implement some of what they're proposing, but we still have time to look at some of the other stuff. And I get it. It looks like another change in graduation requirements. If we were to say next year, no, we're actually going to keep it at 3.5 instead, and we're going to keep the stats there. If that ends up being what the outcome is, so be it. But at the end of the day, I think right now, for the purpose of them moving forward, they're able to move forward. But long term, we can set goals in January around this, and we can dig into it more and give you time to dig into it and with them.
And it is the time crunch of them needing to get this stuff printed in order to present it to the families and the students
And
by.
I know,
Isn't
but the
their fault.
306s, they passed in what, 24? This just wasn't on my radar at all as a new board member.
And it was,
should have paid more
and the
attention.
guidance.
It's not your fault. It's it's an opaque process that many people desperately tried to, sorry, Tim,
No,
continue
go
your
ahead.
thought. No, I was going to say we
This-
spent a lot of time and energy. I spent 2 years on this thing trying to get the public informed, but it's boring.
So December 2024, not released in documents, nor was there guidance provided until the summer of 2025. So as
I know,
people,
it's awful.
Yeah, so when you say this, when it was approved, sent out in 2024, it makes it sound like we've been sitting on it for a couple of years.
No.
That's not the case.
haven't.
we were asking questions, and I will say that the people we've worked with from the DOE have been a great resource, and we call them all the time asking clarification. And to Sarah's point, administration could change, expectations could change, and whatnot. So we as a community, as a local board, need to feel confident in the long-term plan with our requirements. So we can continue to dig into this. We continue to look at it, but let's take our time and do it. I don't want to say we have a year, but we really do. The reason a lot of this stuff came out this summer was because of regions. When I say regions, like the Lakes regions, North Country, everybody coming to the DOE, having the questions, and their response was to do these actually initiated from superintendent level personnel, assistant superintendent, curriculum instruction coordinators in the region began holding these forums to have this dialogue, invited the DOE, and then they took a more active role as it went on. So it has not been a smooth process since the day they passed them.
And I think our staff has done a tremendous job. And I would be curious about communicating the kind of effort this has taken to our state reps and the folks who sit on the state education committee, because
that has been a problem too, because there is a legislative oversight committee that's supposed to have some sort of jurisdiction over the 306s, and they continually, repeatedly ask to meet with the state board and to get some kind of clarity and be able to offer their own suggestions for the 306s. They had one meeting with the commissioner. He answered no questions, provided no response. From day one, there was an objective to be met by certain people, and a lot of work was done, a lot of earned media. When I say I spent 2 years on the 306s, it's not an exaggeration, and they got held up because we kept asking for accountability. That's why it took so long. But ultimately, in the end, they were going to do what they wanted to do anyway. So now these poor people are stuck with like, none of this makes sense. How are we going to make this make sense?
And the last thing I want to do is undermine public faith in public education right now. I mean,
Girl,
and when we
same.
step back math requirements, I know that
there's already a rhetoric happening. Yeah,
the logical argument here, I do worry what it does for public faith and trust.
And that's the point. That is really the point, is to lose faith in public education and to make it a place of last resort, ultimately. And that's a long-term tactic by the far right to squeeze progressive families out of public education because they don't want to sacrifice their kids on that altar, right? I could talk about this crap all day. Don't let me. You guys have
And so two things.
Sorry,
we have Ann. We do have Ann here. And she could speak. There are CRTC courses that do also cover some of the 306 components with the additional math requirements, the logic, the personal finance. So if there's any questions, she could answer those as well while we have her here. But this is what you have in front of you is a new course proposal. And we wanted to do it separate from the program of studies. It will be in there, but so you had a chance to really get some feedback on what is replacing the theater studies program in CRTC.
Oh, cool.
However, with the theater studies program still being in the general studies for the CHS. So it's still an option on the CHS side, but this is the components that we can still do within that in the past would have been rolled into some of the theater studies.
Hello, everyone. So, a few years ago, the Bureau of Career Development kind of consolidated a lot of their career pathways. And as a result of that consolidation, the theater and film program has a SIP code of digital media. So because that has that SIP code, I'm trying to follow exactly the same code. I do not need program approval from the state of New Hampshire to run this television and media production. It's the same exact zip code. So there's no prior approval. Everything is just standardized. We follow their competencies. Basically put together a curriculum following Salem, which has this program, TV, film, and digital media, which has the social media component as well as YouTube. And it combines what we already have with the lighting, sound design, audio recording, same exact equipment, same exact software. So it's a really easy swap in, swap out. I'm not used to coming. I feel like I'm putting the horse before the cart, you know. I should say the cart before the horse, right? The other way. Because we still have to go hire a teacher, get the curriculum. So I'm asking for course approval, and then we got to kind of scurry around and get everything done. But I feel like this will probably be the smoothest transition for us to be able to broaden the highway. So it's not just a theater focus. Instead, with the era of influencers out there, we're kind of expanding into a program that will complement our graphic design curriculum. So we have a lot of students that are already using Adobe After Effects and Premiere, and this will really be a complementary course to that particular program. So I'm here tonight to seek approval for that, to add to the program of study, and I actually believe this will help along with our sending schools as well. And I did a brief survey, a little informal, but last Friday, yes, some of you may have known, we hosted a lot of sending schools, so I talked to them about it informally, some school counselors who work with the students more day-to-day than I do. And I asked them about what they thought, and they were thumbs up immediately. And then I sent out a brief email to some of the ones that didn't show up, and they thought that this would be a really good fit for a lot of their students that like to do their own podcasts. And they said the time is here now for podcasting, and they think this particular course description would sit really well with that particular
And this would
population.
take the place of what course?
It basically takes the place of acting.
Yeah.
Okay.
It takes drama out.
Okay.
Yep.
Because the state has said that we can't
that's not a CRTC.
The fit does not fit the high demand category, high demand jobs.
So is it acting it's acting in, we had like a production.
Yeah, so basically what we did was we had theater and film, acting, theater and film, production. So we're gonna, right, so it was really two into one umbrella. So we're gonna keep the production piece, which will be sitting in our year 2
But it's
track.
really more for film or television, not for theater.
Correct. So we're taking the same equipment we used in production, and we're just gonna kind of spread it out into this description here, TV and media. So it's the same exact equipment from production. The only piece is trying to take. I have a meeting with Clint tomorrow morning to try to figure out what those skill sets are. They're very theater focused, and then try to pull out of that how we're going to spread those into a year 1, year 2 transition plan type
But
of
is the
thing.
theater production part going to be part of any component of, like, we're talking about film and TV, like?
Yeah, in the early stages at least, right? Until we can, so because we have year 1 and year 2.
Yep.
So the teacher would teach this year 1, exactly how it's written, and will teach the year 2. Would have to obviously learn the curriculum, the production curriculum in the theater world.
Yep.
In that same exact spot, would have to learn it. But it's going to be really difficult to fulfill the big shoes of Mr. Close. So that's going to be the biggest challenge of all, is to try to, and then we'll probably have to reevaluate that over time once Concord High School takes over the acting, the drama club, and all those transitions, and over time see how that fits together. But for the immediate year, absolutely. That's how we plan on keeping the production exactly in that same exact time spot as it's run since I've been at CRTC. So,
And so you don't need us to do anything with this?
I think you have to approve.
I would
the
like to
new
motion
course.
to recommend the board approve the course additions for CRTC.
I got to talk about welding. in a minute.
Yeah.
Let's wait until we have both, and then we'll do it.
Yeah. So now this again is putting the cart before the horse, because I have to fill out a pretty comprehensive application with the state. So I'm going to be doing that over the holiday break. So the timelines of the program of study does not coordinate my schedule of the holiday break and the state application. So I thought I would ask. We get it in the book, and then I put the program application together, get it to the state, and worst case scenario is I just tell people we can't. When we go out and do the recruiting, I'll just say, I know the state's going to approve it. Let's be honest. I've got all the companies lined up. I have the surveys lined up. I have all the data lined up. I've already talked to them.
And it's in several other school districts.
It's already there.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine.
It's so high demand right now.
It is
too.
huge. I've got a couple of companies that are already agreeing to write the letters in support. So I can't even imagine. I just.
I want to take it so bad.
Yeah, and so it sits, for a couple of years ago, I think 2 to be exact, we went down from a 2-teacher auto program to a 1-teacher. Matt Cashman and I are going on December 29th, and Kate Amaral as well is going to join us. We've been to Newport already. They just opened up a brand new welding program. I think it was 2 months ago, I toured the program, and I've asked Matt to come back because I have a couple of concerns. Is the HVAC? It's now I'm fully admitting, as smart as I think I am about certain things, this is way beyond my technical skill. I've looked at the HVAC system and the electrical loads, given the old building in Concord. So I said to Matt,
Did Newport have a welding program before?
a very small one.
Okay.
Funny, when I worked for the DOE, I was their monitor that went and audited that program. So that's how I remembered it. So I said, Matt, we got to go back because I'm really worried about the electrical load of a welding program. So we set up December 29th. We're going to go back. They promised to give us their supply list. Brand new program, and it's almost exactly the same footprint as the 2-car garage. So I spent this summer moving the lifts out of there. So the time that we've been doing with the auto program is we got the 2 lifts in. So we used to have this 8-bay auto garage we now still have 8 lifts. It's just in a 6-bay auto garage. We moved 2 of the lifts and went double deep on 2 of the programs. So we had to have the lifts moved, have them rewired, and a couple of, long-term projects done in there. Now it's ready, the footprint ready. So Matt's going to help me evaluate the HVAC system and the equipment list. And then I'm going to queue Ellen up to see if there's any discretionary grants to see if we can, we'll apply to see if we can get, they have what's called industry recognized credential grants. Welding is an industry recognized credential, but I got to get the program approved, then apply for the grant and hope, fingers crossed, that I can get it. But
You
so
can
I'm
do
hoping.
it.
I think so. I mean, the word is
If
only
anyone
no,
can
right?
do it, Ann
I'm
Fowler
gonna
can
try.
do it.
I'm gonna try really hard.
That's the
So-
new district motto.
If anyone can do it, Ann Fowler can.
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna shake that tree until something comes out. So that's my goal, and I think that combined, these 2 programs combined will really make a difference, help us pivot a little bit. And that's, I think, sometimes with CRTC and the courses, that's how we have to look at them all the time. What are the jobs of the future, and how can we keep changing some of those career-focused jobs to make sure the students are still interested in them.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're
This
welcome.
is super exciting.
Yes, and the
Fingers
open
crossed.
house was
Fingers
incredible.
crossed.
So
Oh,
thank you
you.
so much. I felt very
Yeah.
proud to be associated with the district.
Thank you. Thank you.
Terrific turnout.
Yeah.
I did walk away with my name tag. I can give it back to you. if you
It's
wanna keep it
okay.
for
No,
future.
we're not. that,
Are you stealing from CRTC?
Yeah.
Just joking.
And
I'm
watch
just
the
joking,
resources.
Tony.
The meal that they served the other school boards, Sarah and I got to eat it.
It was incredible.
It was.
Best carrots I've ever had.
Honestly, I think that was probably my favorite meal since I've been there. That meal Friday.
Truly, I did this.
Right. Remember Wednesday? You get to.
That's right.
Maybe they'll make the carrots again.
They were very
That
good.
was a
Special
good
request.
So do you want to make your?
Yeah,
Do you want to make the motion?
I'll make the motion to recommend that the board approve the course additions for CRTC, both television and media production 1 and welding technology 1.
Well, the instructional committee, right?
That
And then we
the
bring it
instructional
forward.
committee recommend to the full board is
Yes,
the motion.
and I will second it.
Thank you.
All those in
Thank you.
favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nice.
All right.
Thank you,
Ann.
That's super exciting,
I
Ann.
know.
Yes, congratulations.
Let's
Yeah,
always
thank
end our evenings there.
Yeah, are there any
You can just
further
bookend our meetings and we'll leave
business
this.
this evening?
Okay.
All right. No further
I'll motion
business?
to close.
Thank you.
Oh, second.
No,
Thank you. Got it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Especially since I thought we closed 10 minutes ago.